I've got to multitask, as I've been doing, and I was asked, Julie Fortney and Carrie Over said they were not able to be here, but they sent remarks that they asked me to read, and so I will start with that. First from Julie. On behalf of my family and the music and theater faculty at Mars Hill College, I send our deepest sympathy to Alice and all of Joe's relatives as you gather to honor the memory of one of our greatest friends and benefactors. Since news of her death came from Carrie, Kim, and Mary, not a day has gone by that I have not thought about Jo and the legacy she is leaving to each and every one gathered to remember her extraordinary gifts today. As living proof to the extent to which she has influenced our lives and those of all who came to Mars Hill to learn from her work, simply look around the room at the individuals who are paying tribute. Then add to that number the scores of undergraduate music and musical theater majors at Mars Hill and around the world who have had the ability to use their voices with confidence, endurance, and artistic sensitivity because of Jo's significant contributions to voice science. Jo has been a model for us to emulate, a friend for us to treasure, and a spirit for us to carry on with us as we move her work forward in the years ahead. With all my heart, I wish that David and I could be with all of you to celebrate Jo's life, but know that we and the Mars Hill family are very much with you today and are joined as well by those who will gather in the weeks and months ahead to give thanks for this extraordinary woman. With deep and abiding gratitude for all that Jo means to us, Julie and David Fortney. And now from Carrie. I've been thinking about what I would say for Jo's memorial service for nearly 20 years. Jo began telling me that she had only a few years left to live as soon as I met her. So how is it that I'm sitting here the night before the first of her memorial services at a complete loss for words? This is hard. Jo was the single most influential person in my life. Because of her, I have a career that I can be very proud of. Because of her, I have passion and purpose. Because of her, I've traveled the world and made friends in far-off places. The kind of friends who share in a culture that includes secret Estill handshakes and Estillisms such as, may the figures be with you. I have a Gestell room in my house for those friends when they come to study, and nerd-like scientific fantasy that involves figuring out some truth before I die. And that, whatever that truth is, it is better than sex. I remember being with Jo in the lab at Ohio State when she made a few of those scientific discoveries. I felt like a secret that no one else yet knew, and it might as well have been the discovery of life on another planet. It was exhilarating. Jo was a hard worker, often working weekends, late nights, and early mornings, but she did know how and when to celebrate. We had worked for several months to submit a proposal for a Guggenheim grant. We had rushed at the last minute by taxi to submit the proposal just minutes before the deadline. As we walked out of the building, Jo looked at me and said, "We should go celebrate." I remember saying to her that it was a bit premature because we didn't even know if we would get the grant. And then she said one of the things I've always remembered. She said, "It doesn't matter if we get the grant." And the truth was, it didn't matter. She knew that we had accomplished some pretty important work that was worth celebrating. We had organized her files, and she had managed to write what would become the first primer of her figures. It was needed indeed, time to celebrate. Jo was able to celebrate discovery, knowledge, and small victories, whether or not they were shared by others. She was brave, a female in a nearly 100% male-dominated research world, a senior without her PhD, and a short person at that. And though she had hoped for the establishment's nod of approval, she did not need it to go on or to feel validated. It was enough for her to see her work live in the everyday successes of her students. Jo was brave, and she forged ahead, figuring out ways to do the impossible. She was polarizing. I realized this at my first trip to the Voice Foundation. I met people who loved her, people who did not love her, and people who really liked to argue about her. I figured anyone who would cause that much controversy must have stumbled onto something good. After all, people don't argue about things that they know for sure are not true. People argue when someone is treading a bit close to what they thought they knew or understood. She was a tour de force at those meetings. But there was also a softer side to Jo that not many people got to see. I was vocal coaching a guy in New York City when I learned that he had full-blown AIDS. He was a computer expert, and so I had suggested to Jo that she hire him occasionally when her computer was on the blitz. Remember, this was the early 90s and very little was known about HIV or AIDS at that time. Joe was not afraid. She always took his hand and patted it in a motherly way, and somehow dinner always managed to be ready when he arrived. He was very skinny and sickly, and she liked to feed him. He was smart, and she enjoyed her conversations with him. His own mother had long severed her relationship with him because of his gayness, and I think Joe felt a desire to mother him all the more for this reason. He was worth knowing, as she sometimes liked to say, and she took time from her busy schedule to make that happen. Perhaps one more side of Joe that you may not have witnessed is the fashion consultant, Joe. Joe once told me I needed to find a look. She was talking about fashion which seemed odd coming from a lady who had research film strips hanging from every wall in her apartment and handmade file systems from recycled cardboard. But Joe really didn't take the word no for an answer, so I decided to do what she said. She went into her closet and came out with something for me to try. I was already wearing a golf visor because she insisted we wear them when we worked at the computer in order to avoid computer glare. So here she came from her closet with an armful of something new for me to try on. I was transformed into a mini Joe in a mere minute. I had pop beads, some black smock, and a golf hat. It was a look, all right. The only thing I needed was a pair of thick black shoes, and we would have passed as twins. I don't know if I've really become what I thought I would all those years ago when I first met Joe and began dreaming of her having her job, but I think I've come pretty close. At the last symposium, I felt I finally realized my dream of being something like her. I presented some research that proved to be highly controversial. People were arguing, and there were even some raised voices. It felt strangely good. I wondered if it meant that the information might be true. Whether it is or not, time will tell, but for the moment, I understood what Joe felt all those years in pursuit of the truth, and I felt a little bit like I was channeling her energy, her spirit. I will miss my friend and closest mentor forever. I know she is looking down and helping as she said she would, and I hope she has found all of the answers to all of her research questions. Rest in peace, dear Joe, your devoted and faithful student, Carrie Obert. I met Joe at the piano, so with your indulgence, I have to disappear to the piano, but I'll be back. In 1985, I was out on the road performing when Carrie Obert and my former teacher, now colleague, Julie Fortney, called me and said, "There's this person you need to meet. Her work will revolutionize yours." Yeah, I'll find some